Hello, and thank you for joining this webinar, Your HANA Journey. I'm Robin Webster, Director of Technology and Services at Centec.
Hello there, I'm Steve Stringer. I'm a HANA consultant here at Centec.
This webinar is for people who are trying to build a business case for HANA, and we'd like to share with you some of the benefits we've seen our customers gain using HANA since 2011. We're going to discuss the business drivers that will lead to a HANA choice, some of the IT drivers that might drive a HANA agenda, and we're going to move on to some ideas to get your HANA projects moving and step through a few of the SAP products that you might consider for HANA. So, to start with, improving online analytics is going to be a key thing that you will think about when you're looking at a HANA system. Initially, operational reporting, which is about the operational details that reflect your current activity in the business and support the day-to-day activities of the organisation. So things like, can I trace my customer returns in wholesale? What are the current sales positions for a line of business? What contracts are about to end that need my attention? These kind of decision-making points that you might have on a day-to-day basis.
And it's fair to say that many businesses in their non-HANA environments use operational reporting, but really HANA, with the data all being in memory, really unlocks the value. Brings the speed of these reports right down to make it useful to make decisions quickly.
Yes, and in the past, operational reports might have been delivered from a warehousing, a business warehouse system, or Data Marts, so they wouldn't have been as online or available at such level of transactional detail.
Yeah, not real time, basically.
Yeah, and there's also with the new Fiori apps and initiatives like Copilot, you're narrowing the gap between your analytics displays and your transactional displays, giving you information about the decisions you're trying to make online, and also sort of creating collaborative environments to share views of data with your colleagues so you get the best decisions within your team. You've got advantages like period close times, which can be improved, simpler real-time reporting, all driving better, faster business decisions.
We've seen customers. I know we'll talk about it a little bit later, but with the COPA accelerator, where to run COPA reports, it's taken many hours, sometimes over a day to run a report, and then they're not able to go back and make changes to the figures in order to get a better close position. Whereas with the COPA accelerator, based on HANA, very low risk business case for HANA. They're able to run many iterations of the close period and do it in the optimal way.
Absolutely. With the latest S4 functionality, central finance means that they can consolidate multiple subsidiaries without the need for BW, which previously wasn't possible. And that means you might be able to forecast across multiple organizations in real time, provide real view of real cash positions and liquidity data. All of these things get drawn into what they talk about, the digital boardroom, so that the boardroom becomes a much more dynamic place. They're not looking at paper, they're able to look at numbers, do what-if analysis, and sort of try and predict what might happen if they make the decisions. So, the vision being making the boardroom a much more dynamic place.
Yeah, the YouTube videos that SAP have put out for the digital boardroom product are really quite swish, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. So, and sort of throughout the estate, forecasting becomes a feature. There's lots of analytic libraries within HANA that really leverage forecasting abilities. And again, moving away from the reliance on month-end closes to know what the sort of single positions are, moving to a much more sort of day-by-day, hour-by-hour, minute-by-minute position, and understanding where you are, reducing the need for batch processing, all the rest of it. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. So So as well as all of these other benefits, there's sort of streamlining of process. This is an example you can find on an SAP YouTube video where they take you through an operation that's on simple finance. It's the receivables management, and they compare the use of the Fury data user experience in favor of the traditional SAP GUI interface. And you can see there are less steps, there's less screen changes, which means less context switches and less opportunity for distractions or interruptions. You're going to get less mistakes and faster overall processing.
And I think it's fair to say that Fury doesn't necessarily require HANA in every case, but and I know that we'll come on to talk to it a bit more about mobility later. But it really gives the back end of SAP the speed it needs to be competitive in that mobile interface market.
Yes, and I think it's true to say that whilst some of the Fury apps are available for the traditional databases environments, you don't get all of the functionality you get. So you may not be able to drill down to row level values or all of the aggregations or something. This function is not as rich. To get the real value out of the Fury apps, you need to be running on HANA. Okay, so simplification. SAP talk a lot about simplification, and it always amuses me because SAP is far from simple quite often. So, but if you lift the covers, you do see that things are starting to simplify. So, in the example of the inventory management, it goes from 27 tables down to 1. Now that means there's less fragmentation of data, and it makes it easier to build summary reports or visualization on that data. It's much easier for the people who are processing the data to understand what's going on when they've not got as many joins like you'd have in a traditional database.
Yeah, of course. In traditional databases, you've got normalization, which decreases your data footprint, so you're not repeating lots and lots of similar values in larger sort of sales order tables and such. One of the advantages with HANA, with its column compression, is that to have all that information in a table which is repeated, it's no longer any larger because of the column compression.
Absolutely, yes.
So you can end up with a simpler schema that doesn't.
Dictionary compression, isn't it? You tell me. Yeah. And so because of that, so this graphic you see here I've borrowed from SAP, and they use that to highlight the improvements as a result. So it starts with an example of a traditional database on 7.1 terabytes, and the first step of moving on to HANA takes you to 1.8 terabytes, and then the further sort of simplification levels taking you to 0.8 terabytes. You can see a dramatic change as the things evolved. So, but not only are we reducing data, we're also, across the whole estate, we're trying to avoid having too many copies of the data. And this little graphic, I've tried to sort of describe what we tend to see. And I've had an example with a customer where they said one of the biggest challenges they've had over the last year is that they'd have different people arrive at the board with different numbers. I think it was 5 different values they had for one KPI, disagreeing on the exact value. And the reason was that the data was being extracted in different areas of the business and used for processing, and then when they calculate it, they're using different algorithms, but they've got different source data from different points in time, so naturally they all end up with a different number, which is far from ideal. So you contrast that with the sort of new model, the new dream. If you've got the ability to run these queries and models on your source data, so it can run fast enough to answer the questions, you don't have the desire to take the data out. You can run it all in real time, and you're all working from the same single version of the truth, as they say. And you'll hear SAP, they say things like bring the applications to the data rather than data to the applications. And they also mention the digital core. It's all to do with keeping the data central and removing the need for ETL. So you keep that's a degree of simplification in itself. So the next thing you'll hear them talk a lot about this. Well, lots of people talk about this digital transformation. It's actually quite difficult to get a really snappy synopsis of what that actually means.
Although I like to give it a try. I mean, digital transformation for me is really about more software, and what we can do with software. And of course, software relies on the availability of data. But I mean, the way I like to look at digital transformation is with Uber, for example. I mean, getting a taxi is an absolute nightmare most of the time. You need to find one or book one, maybe hours in advance, days in advance if you really want it to show up on time. I mean, I've had situations, disagreements about routes, disagreements about the cost, not knowing how much it's going to be until you get there. And then somebody came along with some clever software and made Uber and got rid of all those problems.
Absolutely.
So it revolutionised that entire industry. And the same can be done in most other industries. I mean, what you want with digital transformation really is not to be the next Kodak or the next Blockbuster Video.
Absolutely.
You want to be the next Uber or Amazon.
Absolutely. Yes.
The people using software to revolutionise their industries.
Yeah. Making better decisions from better information, from better data, and the sources of data, of course, are increasing all the time to make these decisions. The Internet of Things, RFID, social media analysis, footfall in store, seeing where you're walking around or walking past the shop. All of these things are driving new business models, and you're getting new objectives from the software or objectives set for the software. So also automation creeping in things like finance. You heard of the term lights out finance? That's a new one to me this week. And you talk about omni-channel systems, so bricks and clicks. People have got stores as well as online systems. They have to think differently. Tracking stock and not just in warehouses, but actually in the stores as well.
In store as well. I mean, they use store stock for a lot of this click and collect, and you need to be able to make sure that if somebody's going to reserve something in the store, that somebody else hasn't already bought it. So you need to be using real-time information, not last night's stock position.
Yeah, and there's also things like measuring the impact of advertising in real time. So so you can actually change your advertising in real time to have the best impact to the audience you've got at that point in time.
And all these things are technologies that SAP are working on and pushing, and a lot of it's using HANA as a back end.
Yeah, I guess your opening statement of saying it's more software is probably the reason they're most interested in that statement.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, so the business in an ideal world, the business will be forward-thinking, very IT savvy, and pushing things forward. But from time to time, they're not always, and they need a bit of a shove from IT to make things happen. So next, we're going to talk about some of the IT drivers that might trigger a need to move to HANA. And it's basically if you've got a need to invest for some reason to facilitate change, IT departments will want to use that budget wisely in terms of future-proof themselves. They quite often decide to include HANA in that change. In these circumstances, it's not really transformational change initially, at least. It's often a lift and shift of the database. So, and often the sort of objective is to sort of have a minimal impact on the business itself. But get that change in place.
So we're talking about things like when the current database and application server hardware becomes end of life. Maybe the drawdown period on the investment has expired and it's time to naturally refresh that hardware. We are seeing people, rather than same again, adopting HANA rather than reinvesting in the older technology.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not necessarily always more expensive to run HANA. It can depend from what your source platform was. I mean, for example, the cost of the hardware to run Oracle on Power, for example, would it would actually, in our experience, probably be quite a lot cheaper to run HANA on Intel, but you know, we're only talking about hardware at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's definitely, we have people come to us, don't we, that they consider it because it's worth considering at that point. Any change, you know, okay, what can we benefit from that change rather than just plowing the same furrow and not impacting the business in any way. So.
But it's also worth mentioning one of the large drivers that we see with people moving to HANA, as well from an IT perspective rather than a business perspective, is that we've got the looming deadline of 2025 where we're expecting nearly every SAP product to require HANA.
Yeah.
So it's 8 years away now, but in the life cycle of some IT departments, that's actually not that long.
No, yeah, absolutely. When you say it like that, 8 years doesn't sound so long, does it? 2025 looks like an awful long way away. But I mean,
it's maybe 2 hardware refreshes away.
Well, exactly, yeah. And if you're considering a big outsourcing or strategic change, or you've got a data center change, and some of these contracts last for 10 years, don't they? And if you're talking buildings, so it could be very significant. Okay, so there might be some operational objectives or challenges that demand a change. Performance or capacity is an issue that might force some kind of architectural requirement to change. And Steve touched on earlier the different behavior of mobile users can force a need for high performance.
Yeah, well, it's. I mean, I heard an analogy a number of years ago, particularly talking about e-commerce, when the importance of availability and latency and the ability to provide service over e-commerce, and the same is true on mobile, really. I mean, the guy explained that if you're, say, in a bookshop and you've got a big pile of books in your hand, and you go to the till, and there's a large queue, what do? Do you instantly drop all the books on the floor and walk off and buy them somewhere else? No, you're invested. You're in a shop. You're gonna stand there even if it takes 20, 30 minutes to get served. Now, if you've got the same thing on a e-commerce site, say if you go to Amazon and you buy a load of books, or try to, and the page crashes or the ordering system's not available, you instantly go to another vendor.
Yeah.
And the same is true on e-commerce. If well, it is e-commerce, sorry, but what I'm really trying to say is the speed of your service, the availability of your service. If you're out there on the internet trying to get business and trying to process that business, you need to be available. You need to be fast.
Yeah, it's critical to your competitive edge. And I mean, specifically with mobile users, of course, mobiles are incredibly distracting, aren't they? They've got lots of different things that can throw up to you. Typically, you're on the move, so you have only got very, very small moments of attention that you can take from a user. So they have to be very, very slick. So all of these things can demand the need for high performance. But I mean, with some really basic things like supportable configuration, you might be way behind on your service packs or patch levels, and need within the whole NetWeaver stack perhaps, and you need to make a big change. And if it's a big enough change, it might be justifiable to lump HANA in there. And we've seen that from customers in the past, that they need to take it to a supportable level, and so they bring HANA in at that point.
Although we have seen some problems on people that are on extremely old versions of software where the HANA sizing tools have not been able to run because because the software that they run currently is too old to support it.
It can make it a bit of a challenge to size in that case. But the other possibilities, you've got a large, complicated environment because you're a big corporation that's undergone lots of mergers and acquisitions, and you've ended up with multiple data sources, multiple systems. So there might be you ended up with a high degree of complexity, and there might be some desire to consolidate to reduce your operational costs and standardize on a single platform to improve things. So that might drive the need for one single standard platform based on HANA. Okay, let's move on. Let's get to take a look at the most likely candidates for a HANA implementation. So this is a little bit of a busy slide, but we'll try to just sort of cram on as many of the most relevant things we think that you should see. We mentioned briefly this sidecar possibility with COPA as the example. You know, it's typically non-disruptive because you're putting in a replication mechanism, so you don't need to replace your core system, and you can get some benefits from HANA.
Yeah, really, the primary system remains untouched. All we have is the SAP SLT product, which uses database triggers to replicate the relevant information. So something like COPA, the COPA accelerator, it just replicates the data it needs for those queries into HANA, and the application's intelligent enough so when those queries are run by a user, it analyzes that data in HANA rather than the primary database.
Yeah, but it's sort of a good way of putting something in that's not actually necessarily initially mission critical as well, as it can fall back to the old method.
But as we've talked before, people do that and then they like the massive difference in performance of HANA, and then it suddenly does become mission critical.
Absolutely.
So we've often retrofitted high availability and DR to these systems.
Similarly, we're not seeing this as much, but you can do the same kind of idea with a HANA Live. You can use a sidecar methodology and replicate to a HANA system from a traditional system to get the benefits of some of the HANA Live reporting, some of that operational reporting benefits.
Yeah, again, just by replicating the tables that you require for the HANA Live models.
Yeah. So, but stepping up on the disruption level, you'll have changing your suite environment to suite on HANA. Clearly more disruptive than a sidecar, but it's going to be less disruptive than a big change to S/4HANA, because it could be just effectively lift and shift. Most of your business processes can remain the same.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's always one of the problems with any sort of database migration is custom code, where you know there may be some retrofitting and some changes to custom code, but most other things stay the same.
We've seen some pretty quick migrations there, haven't we, to suite?
Yeah, and with big improvements in terms of performance as well.
Yeah.
But also in terms of data footprint. So, for example, we had one customer with running ECC on a traditional disparate database, and they had the VBox table, which deals with rebates. Their largest table by far now in Suite on HANA. That table doesn't exist. It's a view, so it's not materialized. The data just comes out of the source tables, which saves them a lot of process and a big headache, really.
Yeah, a good example of the simplification they talk about. So BPC, business planning and consolidation, that can sometimes be a good use case to start with, because it can be run alongside existing environments on a standalone BW instance. There's a number of different modes it can run in, but it could be worth considering. If you're in the retail world, then SAP CAR, or Customer Activity Repository, might be interesting to you.
Yeah, and that's certainly important for some customers as part of their digital transformation strategy. So we've got some customers using CAR for real-time stock analysis to run things such as click and collect. But there are other customers out there using CAR for some much more interesting things. For example, with I believe there's some customers who can track individual customers through their store card, so they know that when customers are in store, and can offer direct marketing and advertising to customers via mobile.
Wow. You can do demand forecasting, which makes good use of the analytics engine in HANA. And I believe there's rapid deployment solutions. We should mention those. I mean, they're available for a number of these different scenarios, aren't they? But they'll get you to your objective much quicker, won't they?
Well, yeah. Well, the thing with RDS is they're fixed price and fixed scope, which is agreed up front. I think there's a workshop that you do with SAP or a certified SI for that RDS, and it's from that point it's fixed price and fixed scope to achieve the outcome.
Which, if you're trying to get a business case through, that could be a really good way of helping that.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially we worked with one customer who had the SI doing the rapid deployment solution for business warehouse on HANA,
Yeah.
and the RDS includes the optimization phase of BW as well, and their performance compared to their traditional disk-based BW system was off the charts. Really, it was transformative.
Yeah. So EWM or extended warehouse management. Again, that can be implemented beside an existing ECC system. So that's another possible way of getting HANA in without disrupting your primary ECC system. And that can provide additional functionality in analysing effort and workforce utilisation if you implement it on HANA. And I think if you pick the S4 version of it, you get integrated automating warehousing control, saving you money and complexity from third-party add-ons, and you can get real-time communication of goods movements. SAP Business One is an area you might not associate with HANA, and because typically people in the enterprise space are thinking about HANA. But if you've got a subsidiary or you've acquired a smaller organisation, they may well be running Business One on a Microsoft platform. But a move to HANA would obviously improve their real-time analytics capability, give a better opportunity to scale to a larger size. It can also be extended using the Fury application suite as well. So you could build on some of the ability to extend your application using Fury, which I think is a nice addition to that world.
And I believe SAP have said in the last 12 months, 60% of their Business One implementations have all been on HANA. So it seems to be the majority now.
Yeah. So we've left BW and the sort of Data Mart implementations down the bottom. I mean, there were some of the first implementations were BW and Data Marts, but they, in terms of sort of getting an easy project going, they're probably not the ones to choose, because they tend to be very complex and very specific to your site. So they can be a difficult project to get moving and constrained, can't they, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, if you do the business warehouse thing through the RDS or through another method with an SI or SAP doing the consultancy, if you're doing the full optimization, you are going to see the benefits of HANA. If you don't do the full optimization, you see some benefits of HANA. With native, if you have got a particular pain point which can't be resolved any other way, then a native HANA deployment could work really well. But it is all about tightly scoping that deployment, because what will happen invariably is that something will run fast in a native deployment, and then somebody else in another department will say, "Oh, why can't this bit run fast now?"
Yeah.
And so you will find that these things roll and roll, and more data will get added, and
absolutely
your complexity will go up.
And you produce one result, it creates interest for the next result, doesn't it? It's a very iterative process, isn't it? That's why it fits an agile process very well.
Yes, indeed.
Absolutely. Every result you creates interest for the next result you can produce.
Remember, scalability. It's the more reports you put in, the more source data you're going to need. The bigger the box gets.
Yeah. Now, I mean, of course, the one interesting thing about all of this, depending on if you implemented a number of these systems that we talk about on HANA, then actually the role of BW is quite interesting, because it's really worth challenging what you actually do in BW, isn't it? Because if you've got more opportunity to draw on the source data from each of these systems, so things like HANA Live, then do you really need to warehouse it first? Do you need to extract and transform it, or can we just draw on it using federated access or whatever, or through the business objects tool suite or your chosen visualization tool?
Well, it feels like this is a perennial issue that we always come back to with what is the future of BW? And BW is really good at mixing data and joining data from multiple systems, and of course it's one of the only ways to get third-party data into SAP application for analysis with SAP data.
Yes.
But I guess the future of BW might be that it remains there as a centralized enterprise portal for reports, but whether the data that you report on actually exists within that environment or not, is questionable. Maybe it will be sourced directly from those primary databases. Maybe we don't have any ETL in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, already the S4 product is offering a finance consolidation where you can consolidate the financial figures from multiple systems. And I believe in real time. So
you think that's the way it's heading?
Yeah, absolutely, yes. I think the thing that the data warehouse and Data Marts do that perhaps your online and transactional systems are not able to offer is to create snapshots of in time in terms of the positions in time for those records that are adjusted rather than just appended to.
Yeah.
So you can extract your data at a certain point in time and record it so that you know exactly what it looked like on that day. So there will still be need for that kind of thing where you want to look at sort of roll the time back and see where you were.
Time travel tables.
Well, yeah,
that's another native function that we could talk about at length.
Yeah, I know.
Right, but let's move on.
So we'd like to help you where we can, and we can use our expertise in understanding all of these products to help match your needs against the SAP product suite to help you build your business case for HANA.
Yeah, we've got our HANA On assessment. HANA On was our first webinar in this series. We do have services that surround that, which help where we will analyze your workloads of the products that you want to migrate to HANA and help you decide what the best platform for that workload would be.
And once you've decided your platform, we can help you with the architecture design and help that meet your operational objectives.
So a lot of people decide that cloud's the best way for them to go, and it may well be the case, but it may not be, depending on a whole bunch of different factors. And our cloud workload assessment looks at those related problems.
And once you're running on HANA, we can help you optimize it to make sure it's running at the right speed, the right performance, and at the right cost. Make sure that the size is optimal, and which all of these things will be critical if you have decided to go on a cloud platform. You can find all of our products and services on the link on this page. And this is the third webinar we've done.
It is.
And there's a couple more you could look at that are on YouTube. HANA On and HANA Architecture, which maps the service offerings we just described.
And we've also got another webinar in 2 weeks where we'll be looking at the operational best practice and how you can optimize the performance and cost of your HANA infrastructure.
And there's a link there for you to register. All of the previous webinars are also available via that link. So thank you very much for joining us, and
and we hope you join us again next time.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.